Well, welcome. Tonight is a busy night with everything in the news. We're going to start looking at the world from the conservative view, and we'll start with introductions. Uncle Ed?
Ed Bertorelli, elected town official in town and also involved in the state Republican Party for a number of years.
A number of years?
50.
I was going to say a number.
50, how's that, good?
Hey, Jeff Nero, town meeting member, Precinct 8, Board of Assessors.
Christopher Wilson, elected Milford official of a few different seats and a Milford resident for about 20 years now.
Where do we start? Why don't we start with Afghanistan?
Everyone's mind.
It's
Front page news.
To put it in perspective, we're doing the show on basically the 24, 48 hours that the government collapsed, the president of Afghanistan fled the country, and the thugs with turbans and guns are in the presidential palace posed at the president's seat and desk.
But 1 month ago, President Biden said there's no way that's going to happen that quick, that the
Yes.
Afghan Taliban does not have the will or the manpower to take over the country. That was a month ago.
Well, he quoted 300,000 Afghan government troops were
Funded by
standing up
us.
against 70,000
Taliban.
Taliban. So the odds looked good.
Yes.
And then I heard one of the generals say, no, it was more like 40,000, 50,000 against 70.
Yeah. And the key in that country has always been tribal things. And that's when we win the first time we made a deal with the Northern Alliance, which was a group fighting against the Taliban and their leader. But we sent in, what we did was we sent in guerrilla forces or Green Beret forces or Ranger forces. Dan Crenshaw, the congressman from Texas,
Yes.
who lost an eye over there, was on Fox News last night, and he talked about how that worked. In other words, small light units paired with the Afghan fighters was really worked very well there. So,
Well, we seem to be very good at winning major wars. Yeah.
well,
But are we really set up to be policemen?
Exactly. We were there for 20 years. We spent
Yeah.
billions or $1 trillion.
well,
And
Yeah.
you would think that after 20 years, you would be able to, teach how to sustain a government, protect a government. But obviously that did not happen. As we slowly rolled back and rolled out,
Yeah.
the entire country imploded and went right back to the hands of the insurgents that we pushed away and pushed up to the hills. And now we moved out, they came out of the hills and took control
Yeah.
again.
Right, but I think any agreement made with the Taliban, they have never been true to the word ever. Well,
why would you even, yeah.
why would you think that we would be now? I don't understand that.
The other thing is, Crenshaw pointed out, it's a little contrary to what we're saying in a way. The countries where our presence has worked is where there's a small presence. So in other words, if we had left that force there in the capital and at Bagram Air Force Base and sent out airstrikes and kept them off balance, it's done in Africa. The French have elite forces in the governments, and I mean, a lot of those governments in former French colonies in Africa are really the French they prop up the president who's there because the governments are so weak, but it's all under the radar. And we do the same thing, I'm sure, in countries that we're just not listed. I mean, we have people all over the world.
Here's a fundamental question.
Yeah.
Do I have the right to go into your house and try and change it?
Well, that's
Well, if we're the country that stands for freedom and democracy and human rights, I think that's another part of that question, right? Women and children, killed and raped and brutalized. That's a tough part of that question, right? As the United States, that's what I think we do.
Isn't Al Qaeda similar? I mean, to me, the Taliban and Al Qaeda are very similar forces. And when you saw what the Taliban did before, beheadings, crucifixions, maiming women, forcing all sorts of things on them, because they're basically chattel. Even the Muslim religion doesn't respect that sort of view of women. It's a totally different view. So I mean, they're far to the extreme. I didn't even call them Muslim. They're far beyond that as far as, what do you want to call it, an in-day cult almost. They're like a,
Well, yeah, I mean, they treat their women as their second-class citizens, right?
Well, chattel, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that same, kind of policy will be instilled into the children, and so now you just get another generation that feels like that's just how life should be. So, without us going in there and kind of suppressing that and bringing forth the ability for women and children to do what they can and think on their own, I think you have to say it's part of our foreign policy. So for as much as you would hate it to have troops there and spend more money, we saw exactly what happens when we pull back our troops. Then the country implodes. So do we have to continually be Big Brother?
Think of the women there. 20 years. They've grown up. You've got little
with
kids
expectations.
that grew up thinking it's okay to be thought of as a human. You know what I mean? That, hey, I can talk. I can go out without being burglarized.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, they just had an interview with one of the Taliban leaders and said, these women who are journalists,
Yes.
will they be able to continue doing their work? And he said, of course, but they'll have to be totally covered, and they can't do it in the presence of men.
No, women cannot talk to men. That's
Right. So, how do you take people that have grown up with
Right.
freedom and now all of a sudden say,
Take it away.
The bigger issue is how the whole intelligence establishment, this goes back to if you want to look at history way back, how they could miscalculate and support Batista rather than Fidel Castro. The whole foreign policy thing did that. Then they went in Vietnam and backed a series of wrong people, when in reality, anyone who was there at the time knew they wanted unification. That didn't mean they wanted to be with Ho Chi Minh and the communists. They wanted to be one country because they saw what Korea was, 2 countries. The same way here. We have all these talking heads and these geniuses and a military that's so overboard with weapons and whatever, but the simple foreign policy decision or whatever, that this was the wrong strategy to do. A massive invasion of it was wrong, and a total withdrawal was wrong. There had to be a middle point where we could exert some pressure, because the big bugaboo in this is the Iranians, and they're right next door to Afghanistan, and they're in the Middle East. They're moving against the Saudis, against the Israelis, and they claim that they have the nuclear bomb or not. They're close to it, and they're the real danger there as far as what they can stir up. So, but anyone who remembers 9/11 remembers how it was all hatched in that area and came across the world and hit us. It's pretty scary.
Well, I think that's the big fear right now, that it's just going to be a hotbed for terrorists. Pakistan, I don't know, the defense minister from Pakistan pretty much admitted that they shared their intelligence with the Taliban ever since the word from President Biden was that we're full evacuation of the military. The Taliban has been planning this military affront since that announcement. And Pakistan, they did not deny it. They did not come out and say that, but they're providing the intelligence to the Taliban, and probably weapons and money and
but
everything
did
else.
anybody really believe the Taliban wouldn't come back?
No.
Well, no, of course not. Why wouldn't they?
Who would be naive to think that?
Why would they?
If somebody invaded Milford, whatever the reason, would we ever stop?
No, but again, you have to have a will to fight, and the Afghan people understood an ally is, it's like when Kerry did with the Iranians. They're not going to be long and this and that. Remember, basically they're going to give them a date, the same way with Obama did in Syria. We'll be out of here on April 12th. Well, what do your allies think at that stage? You start hedging your bets, you get out of the country, or you make a deal. That's survival.
Well, the minute you say April 12th, you're telling me that if I'm them, you have no commitment to my country.
No, but
because you're going to pull out.
No, but the question is, we look at this as a foreign policy discussion. These people are looking at life and death. Big difference. Yeah, we're looking at it like, well, maybe it was a blunder. Well, we don't know what the Taliban's going to do as far as executions, and whether they're going to do mass executions, or if the troops we have there, I think there's 5,000 protecting the airport. You saw the people running under the planes to try and get on.
Holding
It's
on
horrifying.
to the
Did you
plane.
see people fall?
Horrifying.
Did you see people
Yep.
fall off the plane?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
That's how
horrifying.
desperate they
Terrible.
really were, though, right?
To get
so
out.
they know. Yeah, they
And that's
know
where the
rule of
military, again,
Taliban.
they closed the airport, but the U.S. military should be sending every plane in there like clockwork to get the people out, period. We can't, if we can't do that,
Shouldn't they have been doing that already?
well, again, but that wasn't, that was supposed to be the thing, and the question is, what about our servicemen who actually fled? I mean, you don't really see the U.S. troops having to flee a country. Like, the embassy's closed, they took everybody out of the embassy. A lot of embassies are closed. And our European partners are pretty shocked by all this, because they're thinking, what's next? So,
I mean, what is next? Taliban becomes the government.
yeah, and then, but I mean, when people start, when you know you could go to a country, say you're wanted in your own country as a terrorist, you know, like some of the Arab countries don't tolerate terrorism, go there. So you can live there and foment your, you know, it's a hotbed.
Right, they're going to embrace you. They're going to embrace you. If your beliefs are against the United
Yeah.
States, sure.
The Chinese aren't
come
going to
along
bother
in.
with this because it's a thorn in our side. So they'll.
Oh, no, I think the Chinese are going to be very,
They
very
said they would
active.
recognize the Taliban government. They're probably similar governments, so we could.
Well, no, you think about the mineral rights.
Yeah.
I think the Chinese are going to jump right in there.
Absolutely.
And then the
I
other issue
agree.
is the other issue is the poppy and the heroin trade.
Well,
Very,
you know
very
that's going to
important.
flourish.
Yeah, well, it already is, but we know it's going to be directed more here.
I mean, that's how they funded a lot of their operations.
Yeah. Yeah, it's depressing.
Well, I mean, sometimes, like I say, I think we're very, very good at winning wars. But soldiers are different than policemen.
Yeah, soldiers don't want to be policemen. So.
No, but isn't that what we've made them? When you're doing this guerrilla fighting village to village,
Right, we can come in with a heavy hand, but then sooner or later,
Yeah.
it has to be more diplomatic, right? And a fighting force is not diplomatic.
no.
It's just they know one.
Yeah.
They've got one goal to win the fight, and move
But
forward.
now you hear the Carter-esque message. Don't do this. Remember the Iranians? You won't do that.
Well, what did the Iranians do?
Please. Yeah.
They laughed.
They laughed. And I'm just wondering,
When Reagan got in, they sent
Well,
he
just
even taken the oath that the planes coming
just
back with the
before Reagan
hostages.
got in, they said, okay, we don't know what this guy will do, but I don't want to take a chance, and our hostages got let go. Question is, what can you do, really? You going to bomb the neighborhoods?
No, but again, when you get into I think we've got to get the people out, the translators or whatever, which Congress had said a month ago, another do-nothing group of people. Let's get, so the State Department, like as you said, we couldn't have made plans to get the people evacuate to the airport area, do a cordon around
See,
it.
that's my problem is, in my mind, for the last month, you should have had transport planes rolling to get all the Afghans out.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
No, yeah.
But it's still
Because
to get people out. But how do we restabilize that area after the fact, right?
You-
Sure,
you gotta
we're on a rescue mission now.
You don't.
But
You don't.
when does it change?
You don't.
But
You're
you
getting
have
these
to,
people
though.
out to save their
I
lives.
get that,
Yeah.
right? But now we've allowed the Taliban to come out of the hills and set up a community, right? That's going to embrace terrorism. And we saw what that was 20 years ago. So we have to, if you're going to look back at history and then only look back at 20 years, we know what they're capable of. So now is it becoming, does our foreign policy need to come in with another iron fist and drive them back into the
Well,
hills?
the
Well,
thing
then you
that's,
have to send
'cause
troops
what-
in, which is not
I
going to
get
happen.
it, but what's the consequences?
but the
though?
thing that's got me stumped,
Right.
you're talking
Yeah.
about 20, 30,000 people, which is a lot of people, size of Milford,
Yeah, well,
Yep.
right? But we don't seem to mind letting 20 or 30,000 in per month on the southern border.
Oh, no.
No, I mean, seriously.
Well, because they're not coming in according to the media. There's no one coming in. Remember, when did someone finally say it was a crisis? They said it was a problem. Then Kamala Harris, the alleged vice president, was supposed to go down and solve it all, but she didn't ever make it down there, did she? And
She
What-
came close. She made it to El Paso.
Right.
I think you saw, yeah. The
you
previous
couldn't write this
administ-
stuff down.
Yeah, the previous administration, there was constantly cameras at the border, and they were very critical. Since this new administration, There has been 0 pictures
No,
coming out of the
remember, he
border.
said you're
and
welcome.
everything's
Once
fine.
the
Yeah.
president says that,
Yep.
Biden, if he did say it, who knows? But
So, yeah, I think
No, but remember, he and Kamala both said, don't come. The border is closed.
oh, okay.
Okay, what happens if I come? Nothing.
Well, yeah, and who's smuggling them in?
We're gonna
That's
ask you-
another
we're gonna-
drug
We're
issue.
going to ask you to turn around.
Right.
But
But I
you
mean,
can't do that.
we're
You
catching
go back.
people
Right, yeah.
up to, I think, 20,000 last month. And then
And they're
we,
not catching so
and
many.
then we're setting them free, giving them bus tickets and plane tickets
To where?
anywhere in the country they want to go.
with what, a positivity rate of what, 10%?
Well, see, that's the killer. I mean, I know I'm being a little selfish, but if I want to bring my service guys in or send my service guys out to do work, they have to do a COVID test.
It's,
Now, I'm hearing that we take 20,000 people in, the positivity rate is close to 10%.
and you can't test according to them, so, yeah.
You can't?
Well, the government has decided that they cannot test, that was their view, or will not test.
Will not test.
See,
Well,
I guess
I think
worse.
they test some.
I'm
Well,
a bit
no, yeah.
old-fashioned, but to me, I caught you, you're getting a vaccine.
Well,
If I'm going to send you to Milford or Boston or somewhere,
So that means, but a vaccine is a 2-shot over a 3 or 4 week
give them
period.
the one shot.
But Al,
Okay, but
Al, what's the point?
But
of,
now you think they're going to get their second shot?
Give
No,
them
no,
Johnson
no.
Johnson.
Give them the
one-
J&J.
no, give them the one that-
All right,
give them
all
the
But
right.
one-
again,
But
you're talking
something,
about,
yeah.
once you get into that level of talking, you've already acknowledged. So we'll give them a bevy of tests, we'll give them shots that no one in the country, a lot of poor families can't afford. These people are being treated privileged, and they're coming in illegally. Whereas the Americans, the people that are here, you know, we talk about a lot of people resist vaccines. There's a lot of people who don't have a primary care doctor because they can't get one, they can't afford one. And that's usually the person who's going to tell you, yeah, you should take the vaccine or not take it. But the health care in parts of the country is atrocious. And what do we want them to come in and, you know, whatever? I think this goes to the other thing, though, is, I mean, Biden had a disastrous summit with Putin, okay, needless to say. I mean, Putin went home and said, I won this, it was great, whatever. Remember the whole press conferences and whatever else. And now you've got this, where he's proven wrong on every point. The government would last, I'm not endangering people, one thing after another. And it seems he sort of did it on his own, because now even the generals are backtracking, and they usually don't say too much. And his White House staff, even some of the Democrats are not saying too much. Like, where did this decision come out of?
The amazing part to me is, you know, I've always said, I listen to Fox News for half my ride home, and then I flip over to channel 116 to CNN, because I figure somewhere in between,
Get the balance.
somewhere in between is probably the truth. But for the first time ever, I heard CNN, maybe it was just one, but asking tough questions, like, where's the president?
Well, how can you, if you're CNN or MSNBC or whatever, and allegedly liberal, okay, and stand for women's rights, the rights of, I mean, they will talk about anything here, you know, any issue to talk about feminism. If you raise those issues in those countries, you'd be killed. There isn't any, I mean, you imagine if a CNN woman reporter got up at a press conference for what happened to her if the Taliban were in charge. Of course, they'll make sure that never happens. But, so they've got to see the disaster this is, that, you know, it's crazy. But as you said before, a whole generation of women got a breath of freedom, or what freedom sort of looked like, and now,
See,
what's going to happen?
it always amazed me. Like, I used to go to the Gulf all the time, Saudi, Kuwait, Qatar. And in Saudi, women could not work. And I sat there and I said, okay, back then they had 6 million people. So you're taking half your population, and I'm not going to get into the political discussion if women are smarter than men,
No, but
not
it's
as smart,
it's
but
religious, though.
let's just say it's even.
Yeah.
You're taking half your population, and you're not taking advantage of what they can contribute.
It's religious, the real thing. And the other question is, a hell of a lot of Saudis don't work either. There's
Well-
foreign workers there.
Well, that was the joke that Saudi declared war on Iran and the Koreans got the contract. But you know, you think about it, if I'm a father Okay, well, maybe I don't have daughters. And maybe I never got married, so I don't have a wife. But I got to have a mother. You know, when you pass these laws to suppress women and their rights, aren't you affecting your own family? Somewhere. Even if you're a single person with no kids, you had a mother.
But these are, we bring up, that's the scary thing about the world today. We bring up extremes. The Saudi form of Islam is an extreme form of Islam. It's not the Islam of Turkey or Indonesia.
Well, the
Well,
Alawite is always
No, but
more
you know what I mean
fundamental.
is though, but we bring it up today.
It's
that
not Sunni or
the-
Shia.
We bring up the Taliban, we bring up Al-Qaeda, we bring up them. The fact is, there's a great number of people in the Muslim world who just go along, and Turkey, for example, you know, women are veiled or unveiled, it's their choice, whatever they want, but, you know, prime ministers, parliamentarians, whatever, but it's just crazy that, again, it's,
Well, I mean, when I used to go to the Gulf, Sharon, my wife, couldn't get a visa to get into Saudi. She couldn't work in Saudi. But the Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, even Iraq, we would go there together and she would work in the labs training people. So, you know,
but again, it's extreme.
It's
yeah.
just whether or not they want to embrace that lifestyle, right? And it rolls back to their religious beliefs and how
mean, yeah.
are they, you know, how far back are they willing
Yeah.
to look at what their beliefs were and not allow the advancement of women in their
I mean,
community?
it's almost a puritanical sect within Islam. That's what I guess you'd call it. But again, that's, you know, it's an aberration. But I mean, I just think in the whole picture, what this administration is projecting to our friends and our enemies is not a good thing. Between the Putin thing, between the invasion at the southern border, and between this disaster, I think people have to wonder, is Biden in charge? Who's making the decisions? It seems in this one he did it on his own and without had disastrous results. So, and then there's the whole thing of willfully reversing everything that the former president did, just almost for the sake of doing it. I mean, the policy at the border seemed to be working, whether they like Trump or not. And then they reverse it. They take it all away, and look what happens.
but what do you think the plan is at the border?
There isn't a plan. That's pretty obvious.
See, I wonder sometimes.
Well, I mean,
Most of the people that are going to come in as immigrants, legal, illegal, tend to be more liberal.
well, they're not liberal. They're just coming in to live. I mean,
But when they vote, when you look at a
Oh.
lot of the surveys,
but they're going to get the ones that gives them the most. I mean,
You're
there's
talking about illegals voting. So that's a whole nother conversation,
No,
just so we.
but there's
No, but they're
Because you're saying
children.
people coming over the border illegally that are voting liberal. So we
Their
got to be
children
careful on
will
how you
vote.
choose those. But yes, I
their
understand.
children will vote.
Children
But
will
again,
vote,
they're
exactly.
voting,
Yeah.
if you're told you're going to get a panoply of benefits, and one party's not going to give them to you, and one is, it isn't liberal, it's whatever. I mean, we're looking at liberal conservative because we're in a sort of rarefied position. These people are coming in, God bless them, to survive. I mean, you take the Venezuelan immigrants that are coming in.
Oh.
Those are middle class people coming in because of the regime down there. And they showed the people, well dressed, you know, desperate to get in, you know, got smuggled to the border and came in, and they're going right to Florida. And I'm sure there'll probably be a pretty conservative voting bloc when you figure what they have. That isn't the point. It just shows you the gamut of people.
But now what happens when they show up?
I don't know.
Yeah, interesting question.
Right. You set foot on U.S. soil, and then what?
Okay, so I walk up and I say, I'm here.
I request asylum.
I request asylum. Okay, I'm arrested or I'm grabbed.
Yeah,
Then I'm
You're detained.
yeah, detained. Then I'm put on a bus and sent, you know, I'd like to see Montana. I may have family in Montana.
Well, you sent to a center and then they send you somewhere. But
Okay,
in
but
the
one way or
Trump,
another, I end up.
in the Trump regime, you didn't get over. And the Mexicans were very happy with that because that whole part of northern Mexico is obviously, it's filled with factories that make U.S. goods, like Ford, different automakers have all factories in northern Mexico. So I don't think the people want people coming through there, and they don't want the drug cartels who are smuggling them in. That's the more important thing. Who's bringing them in? It's the drug cartels who are
Well,
smuggling
they
them.
say it's revenue that the drug cartels are making up for losing the pot sales. that all of a sudden,
Wow.
From the smuggling?
from the smuggling
Yeah.
of people, all of a sudden they got a new revenue source.
Imagine how many die in the trip and are killed by them once they get their money.
Right.
But you know, I think about it and I say, okay, I send 500 people to Milford.
Oh,
Okay.
Don't even say it. No.
What do they do? How do they earn a living?
Right. Where do they stay? How do they eat? And what do they?
It's not,
Yeah.
it's,
Well,
it's
besides
only
all
the problem.
besides
of
all
the-
the impacts, right?
Yeah.
Impacts to the medical, impacts to the schools,
Right.
impacts to the whole community.
And by the way,
That's
the
huge.
communities they're going to are not the communities where the liberal elite live, who make these laws. Let's get that clear. It never has been. They're not going to the hoity-toity suburbs in California. or
They're not going to Weston?
Or Wayland. No, but again, this is the whole hypocrisy of it all. Dump them wherever they can be dumped. But the thing is, the disrespect of your own laws to basically say, and I think Harris has been very clear about it, and Biden's been very clear about it. I don't think they respect the laws that we have because they're not convenient for them. And I think this has been shown, especially this hypocrisy about, the COVID and whatever. It's just utterly amazing. And with the compliance of the media are saying very little about it. So,
But again, I take 20,000 in. I know the rates are 5 to 10% positive. I then put them in a bus, in a plane,
with other people, yep.
tight, packed with other people. Isn't that super spreader?
You would think so.
Definitely. You would think it. All it takes is one person to go into one community, right? And then
No.
then it can spread through there.
If you get over the fact that they're illegal, if you get over, why can't we just vaccinate them when they come over?
But again, the thing is, they shouldn't be. When you start doing that, you're like, we're admitting that this policy should be even there without any effort to stop it. I mean, that's the scary thing about it. I'll make an analogy. It's like these DAs in some of these crazy cities where, in California, if you steal under $900, you can walk out of the store with goods. So they have an adding machine. Oh, really? Yeah, we can steal $875, but anything above that, yeah. I mean, it's like,
Well, no,
imagine
but they've
owning
been
a
showing
store.
people walking in, just loading up.
Yeah.
And walking out.
And the same way with Presley, who's going to be the U.S. attorney for the state of Massachusetts, the one in Suffolk County. She's not going to prosecute minor crimes. Minor crime is what? Armed robbery, drug sales, or whatever. And she's going to be the U.S. attorney for Massachusetts.
Wait a
Biden
minute,
just
wait a minute.
appointed her.
Wait a minute. Robbery doesn't count?
Not if it's armed robbery would count, but if it's robbery to store, no. Drugs don't count. Muggings don't count. So now when you have that, so what's the crime that does count? When you cheapen the whole idea of violence and the crimes being committed against their own community.
Well, I can get mugged and it's okay.
Al, why don't you read what she said? She's basically said she will
Under
not
$900.
go forward with those things. Yeah. This is not just here. Chicago, New York. New York has abolished cash bail. I believe California has gone a long way to abolishing cash bail. So what kind of bail do you have? No bail, I guess, because wasn't bail cash? This is what is happening. It's crazy.
But now, the Democrats have come out and said it's the Republicans' fault for defunding police.
Well, Al, if you believe that one, I'll give you a bridge, and we'll start with Brooklyn, then I'll give you the Golden Gate. I'll throw the Golden Gate in. Please.
I mean, I don't.
When you have a political party that almost doesn't even have a respect for the police. I mean, you remember before 9/11 how people regarded the military, okay? DeVal Patrick gave a speech in the legislature and said 9/11 was, quote, a failure to communicate. That's what he said in the legislature. People were like, a failure to communicate. It takes your breath away. So, it isn't too long ago that, whatever. And now the military's being what? We're told that right-wing groups are being pushed and that there's now an agenda, that the troops are being taught to combat racism and they're doing the woke thing in the military. It's crazy what's going on. You wouldn't even believe this was happening in our military.
What is the woke thing in the military?
They're teaching curriculum about left wing, right wing, whatever. the whole woke agenda, what you talked about Loudon, what you talked about, all of this stuff. Yeah, being put forward.
Wait a minute, you're a soldier. You're out there to protect the United States.
No, your social
have-
media,
you-
your social media posts and everything are being scoured now, in case you happen to be on the right side of things, right-wing side of things.
Who cares?
Well, apparently the people who run the military under Biden do care.
But I thought the whole thing, like when you hear about going to boot camp, they're taking all these individuals and
Well,
making them all act as one in a unit.
but they've showed the list of books about the country is racist, inherently racist. It's the whole critical race theory, but being incorporated into the ranks of the military. Instructors are being brought in to show what the problems in the country are. Racism, this, that. Now, I guess you're looking at your compatriot who's going to be in the trench with you, is either a Hispanic person or African American person or an Asian person. Huh? It is?
Wait a minute. I got people shooting at me.
Yeah.
I don't care
Well,
if you're Asian, black, white,
Well,
green,
apparently
yellow, right?
apparently some people do care, and that's why it's a responsibility of people to look at what's going on here.
No, come on. You're there to cover my back.
Well,
I'm here to cover
but
yours.
I think you get in trouble if you said that to someone at the upper levels of the military. You have a problem, according to them.
Well, don't put me in front of people shooting at me.
What do you think? What do you think of the census numbers now? That the biggest decline in white population. Did you see that? That just
Yes.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's a myth involved in there too. There's a growing group of people who are mixed, and that's a census guy. If you saw the Milford statistics, the Milford figures came out, and we're supposedly 30,500, up about 3,000.
Yeah, people list more than one. They list at least two
Yeah,
now.
so-
right?
Two races.
Two races.
So given that in many communities, in the Asian American community, intermarriage is very common, Caucasian, Asian intermarriage. Black-white intermarriage is more common. And then you have the kids, you had President Obama, number one. And then you have the kids, and what do they list themselves as? You can declare one thing or the other, but in the Milford thing was interesting. In the census 10 years ago, there were 23,000 or something like that, people listed as white. But they didn't have the category of mixed and other. So once they added mixed and other in this one, now it's 20,000 something that are white. And then there's actually about 3,700 who are Hispanic, which doesn't count Brazilians and
No, Brazilians and Portuguese don't count.
Okay, no, okay. But
I
they are-
learned that.
Yes, but by the way, yeah.
When we were at Waters, they had somebody from the Equal Opportunity Office come in, and they were interviewing certain people, and we figured out why. With a name like Alberto Correa, they wanted to interview me.
Sure.
I lasted 30 seconds when they said, well, are you Hispanic? And I said, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I'm Portuguese. They said, oh, you're not a minority.
How
I said,
imagine?
wait a minute,
Yeah.
yes I am. Last time I looked, there's not many Portuguese
No.
in the United States. They said, you're not a federally recognized minority. Out, dang
Yeah.
spot.
So again, so this is why the figures, and then you have mixed and other. So when you add them all up, the biggest growth, the African American population was about the same, and the biggest growth was in the Hispanic population, and then the mixed and other, because they allowed that as a. So you could claim, and I imagine some people might say, by the way, if they're mixed European ancestry, they're other.
That's what I was just gonna say, like-
but no, it's entirely up to you what you want to put down.
Right, but in a sense, everybody's really has a lot of different ancestries that make them mix, and they always would check off other, right?
But they're not asking
and-
you to. They're just saying
Yeah.
what you think.
Right, exactly.
So there was
But
a
I guess-
shift. There was a shift in the
Right.
census versus really a census change. It was just
Yeah.
a shift.
Shift, yeah.
The
No,
way
the
the
shift
answer
was
was
in
the
the-
answers went.
A Milford shift or
That's what I-
No,
throughout
yeah,
the country?
No,
Throughout the country was
Throughout
it,
the
yeah.
country was
Yeah.
it? Yep.
And generally,
which-
the recognition of people of mixed ancestry, because there was a view, I don't know when it came in, but the federal government had a view, one drop of black blood in a person, you were black. Well, that's crazy. Now, in other countries, it will be the exact opposite. The same way with Hispanic. Is Hispanic someone from Spain? Is it someone, and what's the different level? In other words, within the community, there's all different types of people in the Hispanic world in South America, Argentina, whatever, Colombia, whatever. So, but it's difficult. But what's happened generally is there's a huge valid group of mixed race in the country. What a kind of mixes are, and that's very interesting. I think it's a welcome sign because it shows you that people are marrying for the you know.
Right.
Well, your friend Senator Warren, American Indian.
Right? I guess my definition
1,000th
changes.
Yeah.
My mother always told me I had a mixed marriage. I had my Portuguese pure side, and my darling bride who had about 7 different countries all contributing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there was a mix in there somehow.
That's the whole. Yeah.
At
That's
the end of the day, you're proud of your heritage, but does it really make a difference on the job that you get, the people you associate with, or the people that you
But
marry?
at the
It
end of the
doesn't,
day,
right?
we're
It's your heritage.
Americans.
Right.
No, but
I don't care if you're black,
Exactly.
No, but
yellow,
to the numbers
green,
counters
purple.
who are
Right.
trying to tailor districts. In other words,
Right.
Now you're getting to the stage where, well, there's voter suppression, and we have to make an African American district. We can't make it 55%.
I was reading about this, that they want a majority-minority district carved out.
In Massachusetts, yeah, but you
In
switch to
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Yeah.
Is that legal?
You want to ask that question? I don't
Well,
know.
no, I'm just curious because you're saying we want.
Well, they do have, I think, 1 or 2 senators in the Boston, Suffolk County, who are African American, and I think there's a mixed senator who's Chinese, I believe. But
I
they
thought
want another one.
gerrymandering was about Democrats versus Republicans.
No, it's about race.
I didn't know you could use race. I
Well,
would.
it's used all the time. Yeah.
And they want to have a district that's primarily minority and a district that's a majority in a sense. Like,
I was
they
gonna
would
say,
wanna
if you
have
Helps
two
you
dilute
get
different ones
representation.
for representation part of it.
If you
Wow.
dilute out, if you take all the minority people you can and put them in one district, aren't you then diluting their chance at being represented?
No,
and-
but it's an art form. We could get into the minutia of it, but if you're in a district and say you're in a state where and you're Republican, and the African American population is going to vote Democrat, you pack them all in one district. That
Wasn't that what they used to do with Richie?
No, but
when they had his district went from Milford all the way to the edge of Springfield, it was like a banana.
But there's no population out that way. But just let's stay on this one. So that's one strategy would be to pack voters in the thing. The Democrat strategy would be to spread those voters out in as many districts as you could around them to make them all marginal. But they have computers today that can predict all this stuff, and that's how they draw districts today. It isn't based on anything else. Of course, in Massachusetts, it's different, but no,
I
it's
thought it
crazy.
was trying to blend out like Richie Neal.
No,
When
no.
I asked him, I said, with all due respect, what do I have in common with the people out in far west Massachusetts? He said, well, they got to blend out the few, like
Yeah, but again,
Mendon
they have
and the
to-
few Republican areas.
No, they
you
also
got to
have to have-
blend those out.
You have to have 700,000 people in district now, and you got to find them. So that's what it is now, 700.
Yeah, but Ed, you draw circles.
There aren't 700,000 people in Western Mass to do it, so that's why they had to stretch it out. Because Western Mass is losing population big time, and it's been losing it. So, yeah, yeah.
But you got to come all the way to
Springfield-
Milford?
Well, yes. I mean, if it reaches to Milford, yeah. Springfield, believe it or not, didn't gain much at all in the census, which shows you how things are out there. Worcester gained a good percentage. Boston gained about 75,000 people, but Springfield was like the Western Mass is no.
But if you want to include demographics, those demographics can be very different, right? Milford to Springfield.
Well, I'm
to
just thinking
further east.
realistically,
Yeah, but look at our
what,
state, though.
what's important
Right.
to us here in Milford is not going to be the same as
Well-
what's important to somebody living out in the mountains.
Yeah, but
of-
we're in a district now we're in a district with Newton and Brookline. We're not anything similar to Newton and Brookline. Hardly. We're in the Alconclasses district now, and that extends all the way down
New
to
Bedford
the
and
Fall
Fall
River,
River.
part of Fall River, which is more interesting. It's Franklin goes down that way. It's more, but to go out that way is no. We're not anything in common with
Yeah,
Brookline.
but you could argue that Fall Rive is a lot closer to what we are.
No, I say in Brookline.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of towns that way. What's next? We'll discuss.
Talk
Water
to me-
company?
huh?
Wanna do the water company?
We'll do something local. Talk to me
Yeah.
about the water company. My opinion's been well vetted.
Well, I think discussion was almost beside the point, because at each town meeting, I think, the voters expressed a dissatisfaction with the management of it and a willingness to buy it. And I think at the end of the thing, I was prepared to talk, but when Representative Murray got up, who was a selectman at the time, he talked about
The boil order and all
and the
that.
non-responsiveness of the company when it was all involved in the free water giveaway, and reminded people that there was no one was answering the phone when people were calling over there. So, and if you read the DPU report, which Jerry Hyatt and I happened to look at when they were going for the rate increase, and remember they went for 100% and they got, I think, 35 the first time. The DPU excoriated the management of the, usually they don't, but they went through the management of the company, and there's really no idea that it's changed at all.
Well, Chris, answer me a question. Why are we considering buying the water company?
I think because we want it in our own control, right? When you have a private company that's for profit, that's providing a natural resource, I think it just makes good sense to be able to be in control of it when you live in that community. So when I write my check out for the water company, my water bill, I know it's going back to Milford. I know it's not going outside the state to some private investment firm that owns the water company.
Jeff?
I think the biggest selling for me was the water company was going to be sold. Whether Milford bought it,
Yep.
or R.H. White was going to sell the water company. What I think the biggest argument for me, just from the financial point of it, is that control your own destiny. The big argument was, well, the water company can just raise the rates whatever they want. Well, no, they can't. B, they have to go to DPU to get the rates approved. And any capital investment they put in the ground, they're right to get a return on that investment. Why give them a percentage on the capital? And you still have to pay. It's still going to pay through the rates no matter what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So to me, it was a no-brainer to control the destiny. And I wasn't quite sure I followed the logic. Someone, I forget who at town meeting, was saying that if the water company gets sold for $100 million to another private company, say, that would come to the ratepayers. I still thought, DPU I think would have something to say about the sale price of it if it wasn't Milford, you know what I mean? I forget who was talking about that. I was a little confused about that.
Me. Basically, if you look around the country, there are not a lot of public utilities up for sale. There's companies going around buying them.
Yeah, was it Sweetwater or Clearwater? There's one Clearwater or Sweetwater.
But the incentive is all backwards to me, because the owner of the water company gets the expenses plus a profit on there. So the bigger the expense, the more profit they make. Mm-hmm. And realistically, you said it, if I am the CEO of the water company, my loyalty, rightfully so, is to the stockholders
It should be. Yeah.
of that company. Now, I can't go crazy, but
No, but
who am I more worried about?
If Milford Water Company was a failing business that was losing money every year, it would have been sold a long time ago.
So now you turn around and say, we're going to pay, let's round number, 70 million. Somebody will come in and offer 80 or 85 or 90. Why? Because they guaranteed their money back. So they're paying interest on an extra $20 million. That gets added to the
Into the
expenses.
rates.
And they get their, whatever, 6% on top. So it's to their best interest to pay more.
But the reality on the ground is,
I
right
get
now, is the White family, the R.H. White family, but the White family controls the big majority of the stocks. But in addition, the water company gives 99.9, it's like a Russian election, of its contracts to R.H. White Construction. So therefore, like when they built the plant there, the big plant, R.H. White, after worldwide search,
They were a little bitter.
when you see the specs in advance, don't sue us, please. We're just joking. But so it's perfect, because in any other scenario, if it weren't the White family, it could have been someone else. But for all those years, it worked for them, because whatever work they did a little work or a lot of work, but it went to the other arm of the company,
the problem I had with that was, Jeff, you're a good man, you work hard, you put in a bid. I don't know that Donna should be the one judging whether your bid is the
Yeah.
best.
But that, again,
You
they're a
know-
private company, and thank
Now,
goodness
I have
there wasn't.
nothing against RH White Construction. I hope they do bid. But now you got Phil, you got Jonathan, you got Jamie being independent judges over whose bid is the best for Milford. So, I mean, that's the part that bugged me a little bit.
Yeah, but again, they were a private company. They didn't have to get 3 bids. They're not a public, this isn't public money going to, like a project at a school or whatever. You got to get bids and whatever else over a certain amount of money. So, I mean, it worked for the family because one hand washed the other in a certain sense. It worked, for a long time it worked out, but obviously they lost track of the management. I know I worked for many years at the Mass Association of Health Boards, and they trained local Board of Health members. There's a group that trains the health officers, and there's a group that trains, and believe it or not, a Board of Health is a very powerful board in town, one of the most powerful. They go back to Paul Revere was on the Boston Board of Health, believe it or not, back in the day, and their rulings have never been overturned by a court when they go in with something. That's how strong they are. And it was a common that it happened in enough towns that the first thing they should have looked at when that thing happened was the tank. It's happened in other towns.
So back to the boil, yeah.
Yes, and they were looking through lines or whatever else, and as Brian pointed out, instead of looking at one of the most common,
maintenance plans,
and it's one that is not rare. In other words, the top is permeated and birds are up there, whatever else, and whatever. So, in a way, this led to this whole years of discussion. Of course, the thing is, we've had to spend quite a bit of money in legal fees to fight the water company. Would you say it's $1 million, probably?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think, overall, I think it's a great deal for Milford. It's
Yeah.
a smart thing to do. You know, as far as capital construction goes, it lines us up. So we're talking about RH White, but there's plenty of other construction companies in town too. When they're reconstructing a street, we're replacing the gas line, we're gonna replace the water main at the same time. There's cost savings there. You know, if we have a contract to bid on both. You know, they're digging the street anyway. You know,
It's so
lay both
frustrating.
pipes
Again,
in there, you know?
I have no doubt that when RH White won the bid, they were the best bidders
Oh,
with
okay.
the,
Absolutely.
By the way,
know,
I'm
with the
throwing in a third bridge. I'm going to give you the Brooklyn. I'm going to give
No,
Golden
but
Gate. I'm going to give you the one
question
up
is,
in Washington.
what were the evaluation criteria?
Right.
Did it
You know what
matter?
I mean? Well, no, it does, because if it's my family,
Well, now it's
I'm
different.
going, now today, if RH White wins a bid, I have no doubt in the world, I mean, when you were on the FinCom, we used to joke that we didn't have to buy any copper wire, we just threw a penny between Aldo and Jonathan, and we got all the
Yeah,
copper wire
but
we
then again,
wanted.
it's also a responsibility. It's easy enough to say, we can't say our problems are over because we're buying it. Because, no, but those 3 people have got an awesome job, and is that not a great job, but awesome responsibilities. Because they're new at it. They've obviously going to have to bring in a new waterman, well, that's the general director they call
Well,
him.
we're hoping to keep them. We're hoping to keep the people there, including the general manager. At least that's what was said at the last meeting.
Right.
No comment.
So,
Well, you have,
That's what they said.
You have different oversight now, right? With those 3 guys, you have great oversight.
all right.
You know, as
Maybe.
far as, you know, I
but
think,
Ed,
I
look
think
at
we,
Woodland.
No, again,
When I
let's
see what
let's
Jonathan,
just stick with this for a minute. It isn't a panacea to have the town own something. And the only reason I voted for it was pretty clear to me this was not a well-run company, okay? And that's what my concern would be about not making some changes somewhere, because a change of directors or a change of up here doesn't really mean whatever, and that's the key thing.
But could it, right? You know,
Well, no,
that
I think-
general manager is reporting up to his board of directors,
Perhaps,
right?
but
To
I'm
his
still,
stockholders.
I'm still saying the
So-
reality is, as of now and as of 5 years ago, I would not say, and the DPU said the same thing, that there's
Well,
serious questions.
We know the previous water manager during the time of the water crisis, that was problematic, right? That person is no longer,
Well,
you know, the
yeah,
manager.
I don't
we
want to
have
get
this
into
new manager.
personalities.
I get it, yeah, but I think that in the last
yeah.
few years,
Yeah.
Milford Water has had its issues, but it hasn't. We haven't seen those same type
I
of
think they have a
critical
lot.
issues.
They have a lot of issues.
They do, right? But again,
Discoloration
is
and
it-
everything.
Right, but is
But that was an extreme thing.
Right, but is that the manager's problem, or is it a capital problem, is it an investment
again,
problem?
that's what we have to find out.
That's
Right,
what we have
exactly.
to
No,
say.
and
See,
again,
I
that-
think
and
what
that
Chris
boils
is
back
getting
to-
to is, it starts at the top.
right?
If you've got people, and let's face it, neither Jonathan nor Phil are shrinking violets. You know, they're going to make their opinions known.
Well, there's three people there.
And Jamie.
One is,
Jamie.
Jamie's involved in highway and in construction stuff, one point. When that's where we're talking about coordinating with construction. Don't rip up a street, pave it, and
Right.
then have to re-up it.
Right.
And same way, Phil would be in the financial part, and Jonathan is very good about the logistics, as you say, about when he's been on different committees, saving money.
And he's a
figuring this out.
developer.
And the thing
Right.
is, yeah, they talked about, there was a whole thing about there'd be a stock. What is it, have they switched back to a stock offering, or is it a cash
No,
offering?
no. This is an asset purchase.
Okay.
A lot of people were confused. When I buy your company and I buy all the stock, I get all the assets and the liabilities. Okay? That's where we started before. Now, we are buying assets. It's
No
like me going to your house and buying the couch, the refrigerator, you know, the oven.
And not other things.
Hey, if the house is bad, that's your problem. I'm buying assets.
Now, but the question would be, for the investors, there's a tax-free way out and a taxable way out. For the stockholders, is this a taxable sale? That's my question.
I know that we have to conclude it by the end of December
just-
because there's a tax advantage to the stockholders. That's why they're pushing, part of the deal is it's gotta
Well, that's
be
part-
December
Closed.
13th. It's gotta be closed, you know. Now, the other question that came out was, I own a well. Why am I taking the risk? I'm a Milford resident, I own a house in Milford, I own a well. I get no advantage from water.
Yeah.
Why should I take a risk?
Well, you have a fire department.
Bingo. That's what people forgot. The fire hydrants are maintained by the water company.
Well, you have a lot of other infrastructure in town that's maintained. All your supermarkets, your police station, your fire station,
But I mean, just
restaurants.
the ones,
So-
the small
but-
number of people who have wells.
But I
would
understand.
they buy
But yeah,
into it?
but you live in this. You live in this
You live
town.
in the
and you-
community.
the community, and the community is supported by running water.
I don't have
So-
kids in, no, I have grandkids, but if I don't have any kids in the school system, I still have to support the school system.
Think of also your insurance premiums.
Well, what's the impact, I'm not quite sure I follow your question, what's the impact to someone with a well? It's gonna be an enterprise fund, they're not paying
If
through
the
tax.
water company went tapioca,
Yes,
under the new management, not like the sewer department, which you're thinking the sewer department is an enterprise fund, as long as they stay whole. Can't remember us ever putting money into the sewer
You
department.
take it out of the stables.
Out of their account, and the
Right.
water company's being set up the same way. But what people have said is, what happens if the water company runs into a massive
Catastrophic.
expense?
yeah.
But we've
Then-
done that with the sewer department. We've gone to town meeting and asked for money for
Out of the
improvements.
enterprise
Yeah, but it
fund,
came
though.
out of their enterprise fund.
Didn't come out of anything
The
else.
$5 million for the smelly house
Yes.
plant,
Okay, that came from their enterprise.
That
So
came
it's just,
from-
it's just a transfer of money.
you can't spend money.
Okay.
See, people forget, there is no Milford School Committee. There is no
Well-
Milford School System. It's part of the town of Milford. All the assets are owned by the entity called the town of Milford. So even though the sewer department has its own enterprise fund, town meeting still has to approve what they spend on. So when they want to spend $5 million out of their savings account,
Still Milford.
still Milford.
Well, it also was pretty winning point, a positive point when, I don't know who's brought it up, maybe Chris Pillar or Zach, that the budget of this water department would come before the town meeting, or the salaries or whatever, so there's a review factor there. The thing though, is, so are we getting the land the water company owns too, I believe, yes?
Yes,
Yes,
that's an
yes.
asset.
So,
Echo
and that-
Lake.
And that's very important, because they do own vast tracts of land up by the reservoir and over by 495 and whatever. It's important to protect those.
What we're not getting is the liabilities. If it turns out that the company owed $1 million to Jeff. Well, that's not our problem. That's not on the list. That's why we settled for 63 million or whatever, and then there was $10 million of capital
Well,
improvements.
63 was what the DPU value.
Then they added on those capital improvements. To be fair, because a lot of the stuff they did, we would have wanted to do anyway.
Yeah, it was always gonna be added on. That
Yeah.
10 million was always gonna be
The
added
other
on.
issue is the water, the availability of water, and the water department or the water company, the private water company makes that decision, is a key thing in preventing a 40B development. That's one of the first things that comes around. They ask, the first question is there water to do this? And every time it's happened is the director of the Milford Water Company is basically, because they want to sell water, yes, we have enough. Now, it's really iffy if we have enough because the things are
I
under
asked
pressure.
that question once
What?
when I said, how come in February I'm already seeing stage 2,
Yeah, but wait, but the point is, a town-owned water company, the first thing will be not the profit, because you said at the beginning of this discussion, they're motivated to sell water. The town thing will not be that. I think it would be ideal, at least idealistically, the three people involved is, will it help or hurt Milford?
Right.
And 40Bs, the answer, when all of the ones that were approved was no at the first place, because the water crisis is gonna get worse, but the privately owned water company said, yes, we had enough, because their motivation was to sell water. So I think
Well,
that's
I mean,
another safeguard
Think
against
about what happened
40Bs.
yesterday. They declared a water shortage on the Colorado River. So they already said they're gonna cut back on the amount of water going to New Mexico and Arizona.
No.
I mean, that's a serious,
The California
cascading effect.
farmers right now are facing catastrophe. They're making this choice of whether to have to kill livestock. And you know the California, the ripple effect of the San Fernando and the valleys there, because there's just not enough water. So imagine that this is not a, I mean,
Again, that's-
people say global warming, but I think there's an argument climate change, however you want to interpret that, and it's affecting certain things.
well, again, I keep asking the question, if we've got plenty of water, why was it on Silver Hill Road, I see the sign, in February, don't water your lawns?
Well, that's what I meant.
Now, I don't know anybody's gonna water their lawn in February, but that was a warning
That is coming, yeah.
that if we're already hurting,
Well, who mentioned
summer.
Who mentioned at the town meeting that the water table or the aquifer is endangered? And that's why I think it's important, it's a key thing, I think, to have a town-owned water company, that when people come in with these developments, the first thing will be, is it good for Milford, not good
Right.
for the profit?
not do I make more money.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. As always, to our 6 loyal viewers, this is half the story. Just like I listen to Fox News and then flip over to CNN,
God love you.
in a couple days, we'll look at the same issues and probably get a different slant when we do the liberal view. But as always, thank you for joining us. May God bless, and may tomorrow be a better night than tonight.
Thanks, Al.
Far too long since I've been home. Been running all my life